You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenGiraffes.com. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we are doing a manga recap of One Piece chapter 1081. It has a long title. Here we go. 10th Ship Captain of the Blackbeard Pirates, Kuzan. As usual, we will be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this chapter. So if you have not yet read chapter 1081, be sure to do so now for free on the Viz website. We always link that in the show notes. And it's going to be available for up to 3 weeks after the official release, or whenever you want if you're a member of Viz and Shonen Jump like Travis and I are. It's worth it. And as always, we want to hear from you, the listener, if you'd like to add your own thoughts to the ongoing One Piece discussion, like a theory or some speculation, maybe a correction to something I said. Not Travis. Travis, you always get it all perfect, I think.
Well, John, I'm glad to be here since you've now let me out of the Shadow Realm for apparently being so correct.
If you would like to get more information about said Shadow Realm, you can always email us. Our email address is rookiepirateраdio@gmail.com, or even better, come join our Discord server, where we have a special channel dedicated just to One Piece and One Piece spoilers, plus everything else in the universe of In Between Drafts, music, games, film, TV, books, comics, even a channel dedicated to which national pizza chain is the best, and it's a heated conversation. Yeah. You can find all that info and more in the show notes. As always, Travis, you had the week off. You weren't available, or not available. You weren't. We didn't want you around, is what I'm trying to say.
Banished
to talk about
banished to the Shadow Realm. That's what I'm going with.
You were banished to Hell's Paradise, the anime that we talked about. But we had a great time with Ali and Kayla, and I hope you had a nice week off. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I am also enjoying Hell's Paradise myself, so it was good to take a step back and let people who've read it. That's actually why I suggested Kayla, because she's been reviewing it for us, doing an excellent job. That review for this week's episode should be going up by the time you listen to this as well. So it's very excited. Very, very glad to be back, though.
That's right. And we also got to talk about some other anime in that episode. And Travis, before we get started with this One Piece chapter, do you have an anime of the season so far? Or, something we haven't? I'm kind of curious what you've been liking.
What a stacked season. That's
so much.
There's so much. I caught up. The last thing I caught up on, because I sometimes I can't watch like the day they come out, so I have to catch up a couple episodes. The last thing I caught up on was Heavenly Delusion, which we've talked about before.
I still haven't watched.
And I, at this point, 4 episodes in, have come away with it with a stern, what the hell is going on here kind of vibe.
What the hell's
it's
Paradise?
It is so bonkers. And it's not even the most bonkers weird show of the season. Magical Destroyers is probably the one I'm going to call out, because right from the get-go, right from its OP, there is something genuinely weird going on in this show, like an old Gainax anime is the vibe that it gives off.
Wow.
in every sense of the word. It being like rooted in otaku culture, it being kind of this really messy kind of like edgy animation, it genuinely looking like one thing on the surface, but just you get this vibe that something is wrong all the time. It's like I'm kind of waiting for more episodes to come out before I call it like this is the thing that I'm most interested in, because frankly I'm just waiting for something really bizarre to happen, and it's a show that is about a fascist government faction with uwu faces on their suits, taking everything related to otaku culture, and I don't just mean like weeb culture, anime culture, but like anything that you can be passionate about. Fandom might be a more Western way of thinking about that. Confiscating it and literally like putting otaku in camps. I don't have a better word for that. That's what they do. And like the otakus fighting back, and somehow there are actual magical girls, and maybe I question if they're real. I don't. it's one of those things where like it's either going to be a disaster when everything's said and done, or it's going to be one of the most fascinating things I've seen in a while. And I'm it 50-50 shot. It's so bizarre that my spouse is genuinely mad. I made them sit there and watch it with me. Just like, what is this that you've made me watch? And I'm like, I don't know, actually, to be real with you. So that's what I'm going to say for now, because oh boy, a lot of weird stuff this season. Good stuff, though.
Well, speaking of that amazing line between weird and good, we have quite a One Piece chapter to talk about. It's been a couple of weeks, and we're going to have another break because of Golden Week. So this is going to be our kind of recap in the middle. And I mean, off the set, I would say that Oda is not necessarily putting in small chapters in these breaks. And we still, of course, are going to figure out what we're going to talk about next week. And as always, we want to hear your suggestions. So you could always do that or hit us up if you have a suggestion. We have plenty of stuff, though, on the pipeline. So we'll just add it to the list, of course. But let's do the main beats. Travis, let's cover this off. Like, what happens in this chapter? Here we go. So we return to Hachinosu, full of lead, where Garp and the other Marines who are trying to save Captain Kobe now come face to face with former Admiral Aokiji, or Kuzan, who freezes Hibari. We then get a flashback of how Kuzan was recruited by Blackbeard a year after his fight with Akainu, so about 1 year ago. And during this flashback, we learn a bit more about the man with the burn scars who holds the final road poneglyph in the story. No big deal, just big One Piece developments. We cut back to the present, where Garp and Kuzan begin a fierce battle, with Garp so far having the upper hand or upper claw, quite literally. After that, we jump back to Winter Island to find out that the winner of the fight between Blackbeard and Law's crew is indeed Blackbeard, as most of us expected. Law is down for the count. The Polar Tang has been destroyed, but Beppo saves the day when he consumes a special rumble ball he got from Chopper and goes Sulong, despite there being no full moon, and this gives him the chance he needs to swim Law far away to safety, leaving the rest of the Heart Pirates behind. So this will probably be like a 10-minute conversation, not too much to talk about, right, Travis?
You know, that was genuinely our fastest recap yet, and I will not be shocked with the sense of being our longest episode. Just
clearly cutting a lot out there, but there's so much. I mean,
no, you covered it. Two things happened in this chapter. Two things happened. That's just true, but it's the density at which they have happened. I mean, we just got an answer to like a 10-year mystery. Sorry, almost 15-year mystery now. Which is, what is Kuzan's deal?
Which, excuse me, has that mystery received? I feel like I have more questions in the light of these like little morsel answers. Like would
it be One Piece otherwise?
Exactly. So
I guess that's what we should talk about, huh? Is Kuzan himself? Well,
we should start, I think, with the cover story.
There is no cover story.
Sorry, not the cover story, the color spread, which, normally we'd just be like, oh, that's fun. Everybody's napping. Everybody's, it's just the guys.
I know what you're going to do.
I know what I'm going to do.
I know what you're going to do.
This theory has been spreading like wildfire. How could it not, So we see like chipmunks eating their little berries. It's very cute. Robin and Nami aren't there. That's because it's the guys. The guys are in the guys are having boys' night. That's fun. But Sanji's the only one awake. And go ahead, Travis. You know what I'm going to say? You know where I'm going with this?
Is it the stupid cookbook?
It says, and I'm not trying to do a swear, but COC King, which kind of reads weird, little gag. And a lot of people like me saw that and were just like, oh, maybe it's cooking, but like the O is just kind of like tattered a little bit, like what is not going to put something like that. But then, of course, Reddit did its thing, and lots of people were like, no. COC, Color of the Supreme King, Color of Conquerors, COC standing specifically for that, and maybe Oda's saying like, Sanji's going to get Conqueror's Haki next, and this is the foreshadowing, that being the idea. And even a little bit of an extra reference there that like everybody's sleeping but him, which is a factor of Color of the Supreme King. Now, Travis, you seem upset about this. You seem like this is a stretch only Luffy could approve of.
No, not a not a okay. So first off, cards on the table. So I have a good friend that I've been reading One Piece with for literally since we were children. I got him into reading it, and literally the first thing he took away was that this is in fact a swear. Like it's what it actually says on the book, because of other reasons for Sanji. The only thing that I'm gonna really give this one is, do you remember the 2 weeks I should say, before we got the reveal of the Nika model for? Do you remember what it was like?
It was an interesting time. I felt like I was on bated breath for about 365 days that year, waiting for that moment, that Titanic moment, to borrow a phrase.
So here's what I remember. I remember every One Piece theorist becoming an expert in the concept of resin work because because of a color spread that had some, what, in retrospect was very clearly tree sap on it, and a monkey pointing to it, and it had the world over convinced that we were about to be exposed to the resin fruit.
I thought that was kind of a neat idea. I thought that was a cool theory.
No, it's one of the merits, I think. I'm not going to come down on people on this. What I'm trying to say is that the One Piece community, especially the really intense fans, they're not dumb. And the fact that Oda does his research and has encouraged his audience to kind of learn, the fact that somebody could look at that and come up with a resin theory requires research. Let's be real here. Somebody didn't just go, see, I knew this the whole time. No, somebody had to Google this. Somebody had to read and learn and apply this. And a lot of really enriched One Piece theories come from this genuine curiosity. And I love that about people. And I think that that's fascinating.
I feel like this is different. It's literally the words.
However, the color spreads being the trigger for that is never really a great place to hang out. I still love the one, people go back to the one where Oda basically drew Smash Bros. And Luffy is Ken. And that's what it is. Luffy is Ken. That's what it is. It's Smash Bros. It's a fighting game. That's what he's doing. And Usopp and Nami are playing it. And Robin is Morrigan. This isn't hard to figure out what was going on there. But people were like, oh, he was setting up the Nika fruit here. And here's a Demonial Fleur. And it's no. I mean, it's very possible that he was using that to practice drawing, because we know that Oda does like to, sneak some practice in to improve just in the color spreads. That's a part of what the fun of them are, is to do things that he could never do in the main series. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be. He's not playing 8-dimensional chess in the color spreads. He's too busy playing 9-dimensional chess in the chapter.
In people's defense, though,
yeah,
he does do that. How can you blame people? I mean, if you look, again, it's the gear fifth hair.
It's Ken, man. He's Ken. He's doing whatever. The point I'm trying to get at is I would not be surprised whatsoever if Sanji also has Conqueror's Haki. That seems to be a common trait for extremely powerful characters in One Piece, especially ones that are going to be critical in the end game. I am not, there's it's just this really dumb rivalry that Sanji fans and Zoro fans have whipped themselves into. Sanji is just as important character as Zoro is to the story. This shouldn't have to be explained. Sanji got an entire arc very recently dedicated to reminding us just how important he is. We don't need to be coddled about that, I think, anymore. If he gets Conqueror's Haki, that's because he's got the characterization of it. Realistically, he has the will, and if he didn't have it before, it would be because of that past that he's now overcome. That's text. That's just there. It's just kind of silly. It's just kind of silly, I think, more than anything, because people are now going to spend the next 5 to 15 chapters looking for it, and if it doesn't happen, they're going to be super mad because Oda teased it in a color spread, and it's like do you want me to dig into this? Let me dig into this. You've got
I
Zoro.
think it's just Oda putting it down like he's studying how to do it so that when he does it, people will have fun. I don't know. I
mean, maybe. We do know Sanji does research powers and stuff. We know that he's read at least a version of the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia before. But we have in this very same panel, we have Zoro caressing Frankie's face. Like, are we gonna be weird about this too? Like, no, we're not. Of course not. It's funny that he's stuck on his hand and he's hitting Frankie's face. Sometimes a picture is just a picture. You know what I mean?
I like where Usopp is kind of like grabbing Brooks's hair.
And while Luffy uses his as like an art, like it's one of those things. Like the longer you look at this, the more fun it is, honestly. And that's what I love about the color spreads, is that they show us the Straw Hats separated from the action, and we just get to enjoy them in the moment. And I guess that's what bugs me about like trying to like magnifying glass on the color spreads is just like, can we have some fun? Can we be fun? Remember fun? I like fun. That might be why we have a cartoon character as our protagonist.
Well, that was a lot more conversation than I thought we would have about. I thought we'd just be like, oh yeah, maybe, and then. I will say this because people will get mad. I would not be shocked. In fact, it was something I would expect absolutely is Conqueror's Haki Sanji, not because it's hinted here, but because that just makes sense. I mean, yeah, Yamato has it. Like he can't. The wings of the Pirate King have to. Yeah,
I would assume. I mean, because Sanji's going to have some fights ahead of him. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of the Straw Hats are going to get pushed to their limit, but he really is going to need it because like he's reached a new level between Whole Cake and Wano. You know what I mean? I think we're gonna get some good Sanji fights. I agree, and it's also I think stepped up for a lot of people like who he might fight in the end game, particularly against the Blackbeard pirates. Now people are feeling a little bit cleaner about like, okay, well, yeah, Sanji against Kuzan is a real possibility actually. Like that could very well, or someone else. Maybe it's Robin. Who cares? Literally, that's actually what I was thinking about too. Was Kuzan and Sanji, how that matchup might look now.
Yeah, especially with the heat and the Anyway, where do you want to start though with the actual chapter?
I get.
What are we doing?
I mean, we keep talking about Kuzan. I think it's just best to start with him.
Start with Kuzan.
He's the man of the chapter.
That's right. I did want to, of course, even though you just said that, I did want to kind of bring up the theory that Prince Groose is somehow connected to Sengoku because their hats look kind of similar. I think that theory is kind of whatever. But, I have another one that, of course, we haven't talked about before because I wasn't as aware of it. And I thought it was just kind of dumb until people started bringing it up 2 weeks ago. And we'll get to that. But so Kuzan shows up. And this is after we see that Garp is like, after all these years, I'm losing my edge. Which I don't know. That was a pretty big attack. You can read it as like, oh, he's being like kind of modest or he's kind of just being like a goof. But I know we've seen this before, like with Rayleigh kind of being like, you know what, I'm really not that strong anymore. I'm not. This is not me in my prime. But I mean, how much stronger was Garp really? That's a fun sort of road to go down. I think of like that era, the Roger Pirates era. And what that was really like, because I like that it heightens the tension, the stakes, and makes it feel like, the road ahead, the seas ahead for the Straw Hats aren't going to be so smooth just because Kaido is done. So
I agree. It's played for a gag here, but, there's still that like lingering sense that we're owed something resembling a Rocks flashback or a God Valley flashback, where we might get to see the rest of these characters in their prime. We've seen Roger, kind of a little bit, but it would be super cool to see what that difference is. It is a nice reminder that we're not at the pinnacle, though, when it comes to the Straw Hats.
We see that Hibari gets frozen, which I mentioned. She was apparently having trouble getting Kobe's shackles off, which I thought was interesting, because clearly there's something abnormal about these shackles. Obviously, it's not. I don't think it could be Sea Prism Stone, or maybe it is, but like Kobe doesn't have Devil's Fruit, right? Well,
so it's still unbreakable, right? Or it's still like a really strong material,
right?
Even without that property.
It wouldn't make him it wouldn't make him like weak or sort of like sick, but it would sort of just like keep him restrained. But it doesn't really have an effect on like hockey, right? So like I guess I find it kind of, I guess at the same time, like we've had hockey users be like, oh, I can't just break that. So yeah, I guess that's the case.
Yeah, I could have sworn it was like one of those ones where it was supposed to be like the strongest material or one of the strongest materials.
Yeah, it's up with the poneglyphs. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's also just possible that Kobe was just like, it's easier for me to carry this right now than like I could absolutely see that. But I mean, Hibari didn't really show any signs of hockey use either, so maybe maybe that's it. But yeah,
what
I
if
kind of just
she could have
assumed-
hockey use? Because I mean, what if she's related to Akainu?
I had heard. Okay, so I'm not
That's been
crazy.
spreading. It's been spreading like magma lately, and
People have been saying that, and I was like, did we know that?
Well, okay. So
What?
the first I heard of this theory was 2 weeks ago, and I thought it was a joke. But it was when we actually had some dialogue from Hibari beyond her initial introduction, and so a few people noted that her accent is a Hiroshima accent, and there's only one other character in the story that Oda has written for her dialogue to be like that. Now we can't notice it because the translation, right? The translation doesn't really note a big like affect, but in the actual like Japanese and the manga, people have noted that it's like a very unique thing. It's like kind of the equivalent of like somebody having a southern accent in the US.
Yeah.
And like it being very pronounced. And so people are like, okay, that is a possible connection between the two characters, but not just that. I think people like the idea of like Kobe and Akainu have like a very, very like contentious dynamic, because Akainu basically tried to kill him during Marineford. So the ironic thing of like if Akainu had a daughter who is in love with someone he hates, and also like Garp's apprentice, there's a little bit of a fun irony there that I think people are like, oh, that would actually make sense, and it would kind of serve the story. So that's where that's coming from. The problem, of course, is that they don't look alike.
I mean, that could be just because the admirals in particular have a design rule that not the rest of the cast has in place. They're one of the few where you can see exactly where Oda drew inspiration from. So that I like the idea. I liked the idea mostly because she's the one who gets frozen, and it sounds just incredibly petty.
Yeah,
and that's just funny to me.
It's sad though. I think that you can clearly tell that not just Kobe, but also what's her name? Kujaku, I think. She's also, very upset about this, because I think she probably has like, some kind of connection there with Hibari. Maybe they're like friends and,
Well, it's clear from Kobe's reaction here that
he's got a little crush.
Well, not only that, but he's kind of in awe that not even just not sword members came, but like he sees Tashigi and is like, wait a minute, it wasn't just them. These are the Marines that have a camaraderie between them. They have some sort of connection beyond their charter, so to speak.
They're like a crew.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just Sword. It's confirmed that Tashigi is not part of Sword, and not everybody here is part of Sword, except for the ones we know. And there was also the guy that was with Prince Cruz, like behind him. I don't remember if he was introduced in that chapter a while back, where we were introduced to Prince Cruz, but I don't know who he is. He has the same kind of hat.
We saw him last chapter. We saw a panel of him, but I don't think he's been fully named or anything yet.
He's not one of the clay soldiers, is he?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's possible, but I don't think so.
I mean, it's just the hat. I don't know, but okay.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's the same hat.
I like this. I like this group. They're fun. They're nice. But then Kuzan shows up, and here's the first thing I had to bring up. I mean, it's interesting to me, and kind of weird actually, that Kuzan snuck up on them. Like I don't get how that happens. Like maybe Garp is just a little bit too distracted, and he's kind of like freewheeling. But Kobe has excellent observation hockey, like extremely excellent observation hockey. The idea that like Kuzan could sneak up is actually kind of interesting to me. I don't know if it was something you thought was interesting as well. If you're just like, okay, well, he's an admiral, of course. Or
I guess the question is like we don't. Oh God, I feel like I'm about to power scale. But we've never really seen like what the standard for an admiral combat wise is supposed to be, right? Like we know that they're hypothetically supposed to be at least like Yonko level. Like if an admiral took a fleet out to fight a Yonko, it would be a fight. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be just one sided. But we also know that it is possible to kill observation hockey now, to zero it out. Or I guess maybe the better way to put it is to beat it maybe with your own. because that's what they've said Shanks is the observation hockey killer. So it's possible that his own future sight just cancels that out. Like, it's impossible to get a read on him because he's already got a read on the situation.
That fits the character too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Considering it's still kind of hard to get a read on anything about Kuzan at this point.
Well, and that was the other thing that I was going to get at is that it's very possible that just the chaos of the situation gave him an opening. And at this point, like, this is the official introduction, from the chapter title, and we're going to get a character card for the first time for this. This is the moment where it becomes official, right? Like, if Kuzan had just walked up to them during this, I don't think they would have even thought to sense malice.
I guess. I mean, here's it.
I'm going to apply the Nami rule, what I call the Nami rule, which is that because she has no true malicious intent to Luffy, she can do as much damage as she wants to him. Mm-hmm. Same rule applies. Like, they don't until this moment, they don't really think he's a threat. They even like, hey, what are you doing? There's a freezer, you goofball. I
think that's a Garp thing, though, isn't it?
I mean, it is. He's straight up demanding it. And then Kuzan speaks, and Garp kind of realizes what the situation actually is. Like, that's all it takes. But in that moment, it really is supposed to be kind of like this big betrayal kind of situation.
I wrote down that we're probably gonna have a 10-minute conversation about the pirates calling him Kuzi. But of course we are pressed for time, so I'm gonna have to pull a card on that.
I do love it, though. I do love it. I love the idea, especially because you turn a couple of pages, and it does seem like he actually might be the kind of person who's been hanging around here with these pirates, and they're all calling him Kuzi.
Yeah, there's actual affection there. I was going to say, it's interesting because we didn't think Kuzan was on the island because the other captains were there, and none of them referred to him or seemed to really they didn't acknowledge that he was also on the island. I'm assuming that they knew he was. And it is kind of interesting to me.
Last time we talked, I was firmly Kuzan's the one heading to Egghead. I was that guy. So yeah, this was like, oh, woof, okay, the game has changed.
Which it still fits. I think that I think even we mentioned it too, either on the air or off, that Kuzan against Garp is something that is very narratively we did mention, I know for sure, that somebody had to show up, because whether I was under the impression it would be Blackbeard, and that the timelines were a little fuzzy. I think that we're at this point seeing that the timelines probably aren't as fuzzy as we might have said, and that these things really are happening concurrently. Again, could be wrong. But Kuzan showing up is a game changer, because at this point, Garp is for sure going to have his hands full against Kuzan. I don't think it's an easy fight for either of them. And we still have Vasco Shot, Shiryu, we have Pizarro, and we have San Juan Wolf also on this island. Hibari is down for the count. Kobe is chained up. This doesn't look super great for Team Sword, quite honestly. I don't know how this would shake out unless another big thing happens, quite honestly, or if they for some reason get overwhelmed by Garp's strength and it causes some big thing and they escape. Who knows? But otherwise, I wanted to mention the flashback next. Travis,
I think let's do it.
I love this. I love every frame. I love every conversation point. I love the visuals. I love it. It's so weird seeing Blackbeard, the big villain of this series right now, and Kuzan, a character that I think a lot of us have been rooting to sort of be like, oh, he's a character who's going to betray Blackbeard at some point, all this stuff, and making it seem like this is like an uneasy alliance. Watching them pal around and have fun and kind of act like Straw Hat pirates, but obviously the dark parallel, I love it so much, because it makes everything infinitely more interesting for this story to sort of reframe what the Blackbeard pirates are like, how they contrast the world government, and what Kuzan's motivations are, because we finally get some hints to something else going on with the guy. It's been a year since he lost his leg. He says he's in a state of mourning. I want to start there. Because also his insane power of he froze San Juan Wolf and who knows who else. I think we see some pirates on horses and stuff, and Don Auger and Stu. It's hard to tell if they're frozen, but they might be. But state of mourning. Do you think he's mourning like what happened with Akainu, losing his leg, leaving the world government, maybe something else we don't know about yet, like actual mourning like a person? What do you think?
I think the answer is in his drip. Honestly. He's still wearing the coat. He's still wearing a white coat. He still kind of looks like a Marine coat. It seems like in this moment he's very emotionally fraught. He's not. I would say this is Drifter Kuzan, who we kind of thought he was originally. Back in Punk Hazard where we saw him briefly, because he's yet to really figure out what he's going to do. We get to the end of this flashback, and it's what Blackbeard asks him that actually gets him to join. Is what do you want to do? It's a very Luffy thing, actually. Since you bring up the parallels, it's a very kind of Luffy response to the situation. And this sounds like something he would say, honestly, with all the context.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And I want to know too. It's so interesting when they zoom in on Aokiji's eye, and it's kind of got that like white pupil, which or I think I'm using the right word, not iris, but pupil, where it kind of almost looks like Mihawk's eye, or like the eye of like not Eam, but like some characters you've seen have like who we think there's all the theories on characters who were cursed, and the certain characters have certain eye patterns that can say something about their state of being, how mad they are, whatever you want to say. In this case, I think Kuzan is like out for blood, basically, but he didn't provoke the fight, he says.
It's big JoJo menacing vibes, is what this is. Which makes it just the best gag when you page over and they're just vibing. It's a great gag.
It's such a contrast too from like the last chapter where it just seemed like the Blackbeard pirates were overly dysfunctional, like plagued by inaction. They're like, oh, we'll get in trouble with Teach, and kind of bickering with each other. But in this, they're palling around, they're having fun, and Aokiji kind of jumps in with that, right? He's making jokes about Akainu, and I had to stop reading. I was laughing. I was just like, this is amazing. Like, I cannot wait for this to hit the anime, because they're probably gonna like really, really like indulge on these frames. But then we get to the whole burn scar thing. And where do you want to go with that? Because this has been another big point of contention for One Piece fans of who this is going to be. The major theory right now, I think a lot of people are saying it's Dragon. I don't love the idea that it's Dragon, personally. The other major one I've seen is a lot of people claiming that this is Sunbelt, so one of the Roger pirates. I don't have any good counter sort of arguments or any sort of like, I like this person better. I still kind of like the idea of it being somebody totally new, who's kind of related to something where, almost kind of my theory for the 10th Titanic captain before that got obliterated. But what do you think? I
don't love the Dragon theory either. And
we know his ship isn't all black. We've seen his ship.
Full disclosure, I have avoided any theory videos this week because I knew we were going to be really in the thick of this, so I didn't want to like compromise that conversation. So this is a week that I just avoided any discussion of it until
I did it for you.
But I did, but I saw the recommendations. I saw some of the chatter going on.
Also,
I'm not
why
a huge
would
fan
Dragon
of the theory.
want the poneglyphs? It doesn't make sense. Sorry.
I mean, you have that relationship he has with Clover. Like, you could extrapolate this out. I can see how you could extrapolate such a thing out. However, we know that Blackbeard has had a direct confrontation with Dragon. Here he is speaking as if he has no idea who they're looking for, which is a part of the gag with Kuzan, like, oh, I've got a burn mark, kind of like he's clearly sloshed at this point, and I love that about him. But for him even too. Like, for me, this does feel like a new character, and I'm going to throw it out here. This is a very, very rough working on theory, but I don't know why I feel drawn to this other than trying to piece together what could possibly justify Oda bringing in a new character so late in the game and making them so important to being like the last hurdle to clear to One Piece. And I want to say it's another pirate inspired by a historical pirate. I outside of that being something that's at least satisfying from I've always wanted to have this character in. kind of deal where it's like a reference to somebody. That's kind of the only thing that really makes it feel particularly big to me. And the thing that really draws me to that is one word: eye patch.
Okay.
As I'm sure you know, it's one of the fun little piece of trivia bits for One Piece. Out of all this manga, all this content, 1,081 chapters, to this day, no character with an eye patch. Not one. No character with an eye patch. And Oda's been asked about this. Why have you made a pirate series, a pirate adventure manga with some of the most bizarre designs of all time, and you have actively avoided eye patches on these pirates? How? Why? And some of the answers could now be things like hockey, but Oda has said in the past that he has a reason, that there is a character this is reserved for, that the eye patch itself is something that he is very much aware of. He's doing it on purpose. So maybe it's this guy. Maybe it's Eye Patch Man, and he's had this kicking around. There's a pirate he's always wanted to draw, and it's on this ship, and he's the guy with the eye patch. Other than that, like, it's the only like longest term possible payoff I can think of that would really justify centralizing this around a new character. And I think it's a new character. I think this information that we have here is to explicitly guide us away from a bunch of different characters. It feels purposeful. Well, I mean, it is purposeful. I mean, like, it feels like it's purposely saying, hey, it's not Kuzan. It's not anybody. Calm down. It's not Saul. It's somebody new. They do this. They have this kind of boat. You've never seen anything like this before. Kind of setting that expectation a bit. But I mean, man, we got so many characters.
I do have to, there is a character. There is a pirate who's had an eye patch, and I'll send you the image. And I feel bad. I feel a little bit like you went through all of that. I didn't stop you, but I just wanted to let it ride out. It's also in the manga, not just the anime. But there is a side character who wears an eye patch during Wano. And so I just sent it to you. And
that's come on.
That's an eye patch.
Come on.
That's an eye patch.
That is no.
It's an eye patch. And also, yeah, I mean, I get this.
Okay,
you're saying.
Okay, named character. All right. Fine.
And,
I will amend. It's not a named character, but like there's. I'm just saying what the man has said. All right.
I know. And then the top comment there mentions what you already covered. Like Crocodile has the hook hand, Zeph has the peg leg, Lucci kind of has like a parrot. So yes, we have seen these like characteristics come with pretty important characters, and yeah, I'm with you there. I again can only reiterate that I want this to be a new character. I want this to be a character that's like, at the same time, I could see them being like a Roger pirate kind of thing, because we have like along the journey have had these run-ins with the Roger pirates, and I think we are due, right? So we had Crocus at the very beginning of the Grand Line, and I think that was a purposeful thing. It's like they have sort of like camped out along the way to sort of like settle the Grand Line and sort of be like its gatekeepers. And I think it would make sense for Gabon or Sunbel to sort of like have like a Rogers Pirates contingency. Maybe they have like a new ship after the Oro Jackson, and I don't know, maybe they do stuff with it. Is it a little bit underwhelming as an idea? You tell me.
I think new character is the vibe now. I think hopes and dreams aside, I think it's new character. That seems to be the case. We think we've talked about the Roger Pirates and kind of where they've been before, but I really do like this idea that Roger like left instructions with several of them. That like that's why Shanks behaves the way that he does. Crocus again, Rayleigh at the halfway point. They're almost not. Again, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily like the idea of like a destined successor. That doesn't really vibe. But this idea that they're at least like keeping an eye on things, intervening if they absolutely have to.
I mean, there has to be something, because how else would they even know this person exists? How does anyone know that this man with the burn scars has the rhodoponic lift? There has to be more of a story there. There has to be some kind of connection. And I think, like, for example, the Straw has, or Shanks, somebody like has a run-in with a character who knows about this or has firsthand knowledge. And like maybe we get a more of a hint of where this lore derives from.
What's that you say? Someone who we need to have like a lot of knowledge, just a big, dare I say,
brain,
a database,
maybe like some kind of apple on top on top of their head, like Isaac
somebody
Newton,
who knows more than anything, more than anyone else, who might drop a little bit of information for them.
I've got it. Hattori.
That's it. It's the bird.
Where has he been? Where has he been? He's going to lead us to the eye patch wolf. Man. So I love the info dump here, but I of course, like, we can't see anything too definitive, but I just love the idea that we are sort of like winding things down with the story a little bit. Also, I want to say, because it's been invoked, I think that it's Oda eliminating two of the major theories that could be happening, because Lafitte kind of mentions that it could be a devil fruit. I think that means it's not. And I think Shiryu mentioned that it could be the world government trying to like make sure no one ever finds a One Piece. That makes me think it's not. If anything, I think that kind of makes, I think it's very unlikely the world government is in control of this, because I think that they would just protect it in a totally different way. But so I just want to get that out there.
What are the odds Pluton is an all black ship?
You know, we have Titanic captains, Iceberg. Water 7. Is he coming back to the story? We had Water 7 evoked by Zoro not too long ago. We have Tom? Tom's alive. Tom and Saul. They were introduced around the same time.
Oh, man. That would be such a shame. Could you imagine? Oh, man.
Then Frankie kicks him back into the grave like Luffy and the zombie, you know?
Just put...
Yeah.
We're good. We're good. Thanks, though. I got this, buddy.
I think who are the major pirate captains that haven't been covered up? Because I think Gold Roger, he's supposed to be Henry Avery, right? The king of the pirates, the one who did like the Libertalia. Obviously Blackbeard. Who are the other big ones? We
have Bonnie, of course, is inspired by a real life pirate. Yeah. Eustace Kid is inspired by a real life pirate. This is where I was stumbling, right? I wanted to come to this with I want this to be
Davy Jones.
Well, I was literally going to lean that way. I was actually going to shoot that shot, and then I went, wait a minute.
Right, though.
Horty Jones, right? Like, that's what that was supposed to be.
Yeah, but he wasn't. Oh, yeah, it's true, huh? Because he had the Fishman and the Davy Jones locker. Dang, that would have been good.
Yeah,
Is it Arlong? Arlong. He's back.
Arlong's back.
Yeah. People keep saying that the burn scar is like a tattoo, which, I mean, like the tattoo could have like there are all kinds of characters with tattoos, and that could be part of it. I don't know. But that's part of what made me think Sunbell a little bit too. It was like kind of an interesting option, just because he is a fishman with the plot armor tattoo.
Yeah. Honestly, like the burn, like it being a burn scar and like being highlighted in the Viz translation, I kind of don't like that. I don't, I'm not about to question the translation skills of the people who work on One Piece, because translators have to work extremely hard and they have to be really knowledgeable what they're doing. So I'm not questioning if it's incorrect. I just feel like it's going to make it harder for us to really grasp what's going on.
Yeah, it's probably more of like a shortfall on our part of understanding the full context of what that would mean in both languages. That's my assumption.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be just a little bit off the mark, because like tattoo feels rough. Brand, now, like you talking about like a fishman, now we're talking, because a brand is a burn, but it's different than like what Kuzan has, right? It's a different kind of thing. So, and we know that the Celestial Dragons brand their property. Gross people. It's possible, not necessarily a fishman, but it could be anyone, really.
Kevin mentioned Zebek and any of the holdouts from the Rocks Pirates, the God Valley incident. There's a lot of potential there as a connection to this character.
It's possible, but again, you would think Blackbeard would be the guy who would have the info on that instead of be looking for it.
He wasn't there, right? And he knows a lot of that stuff secondhand. Although we don't know that he wasn't there. We don't know that. He was, I think, he was like, not a baby, but he was tiny, right? Because he's a little older than Shanks, and Shanks was like a baby during the God Valley incident. So All that
this is one of those tricky things where it's like, how much does Blackbeard know is such a wild card when we're trying to grasp this stuff, because he could be lying. He could just be lying, and he knows, and is just trying to pry for more information. That's entirely possible here, because my guy is really good at
I feel like he's more straightforward than that.
Well, I know, but it's not that like he's, I've mentioned before, I don't know that he's necessarily like a grand schemer as much as he's a lucky guy. And I know I'm going to call a slanderous fiend for that later, but he has played coy with what he knows quite a bit, for a long time. And we also know that like Luffy knows something about Blackbeard that's never been explained just from meeting the guy. So like, it's just one of those things where I never know exactly where to pinpoint just like how much of this is Teach being Teach and how much of this is Teach being clever. You know what I mean?
Well, speaking of, I do think it's kind of funny that we get another Ohara mention. Ohara keeps getting invoked over and over again. And it makes sense with Kuzan, right? Since he was there. But he starts to tell the story of like the Robin flashback, and Jesus Burgess literally calls it a boring story. And then Lafitte is trying to be all sneaky and be all like, oh, we could steal his devil fruit. More on that later, because there's some interesting stuff there with the black market of devil fruits that apparently Blackbeard is involved in. But no, of course, Blackbeard, after Kuzan kind of goes nuts and like freezes a bunch of people, including it looks like Pizarro, and I would assume Lafitte, but Blackbeard is still standing, of course, and he makes the pitch. And he's not the only one standing, because somebody else is like, oh, have you lost your mind, Captain? But he convinces Aokiji to come with him, even though Aokiji's like, I don't trust a lot of you just because we shared drinks. But then Blackbeard is like, he mentions that all they need is pirates to team up. They don't have to be the best of friends. They just need to have the same interests, an alignment of interests. And then he asks Aokiji, what do you want? And I think that's still the major mystery. It's behind Kuzan. What does he really want? He's mentioned that he has a particular sense of justice. That is the main issue between him and Akainu. And we have hints of what that really is, but I think that we are still missing a huge layer with this character that is yet to be revealed. But what do you think? Do you think why do you think he did this? Why do you think he would go with Blackbeard at this point?
So
his little crush?
Well, the first thing that I do want to call out really quick is when Lafitte is talking to Blackbeard already doesn't like this idea.
Right. His face is very much like...
is very, this is not an instance where I think Teach is lying. I think he's being honest here. Which is again, it's not the same as like Luffy asking somebody to join. But it's also very clear that like he sees, to me, again, somebody who's very directionless. This version of Kuzan, he flips a switch immediately. Twice over the course of just this flashback. He, Blackbeard's crew came in, ticked him off. He froze him just like that. Blackbeard comes in. He's super menacing, super, JoJo menacing. Then they crack jokes. They're drinking. He's shifted completely into a different mode, a mode we don't really see Kuzan in before. He's getting a little slosh. He's having a good time. Somebody says something even remotely in his direction that might be a fight. He's on the defensive. He's like it's like he's a downed animal. Like he feels cornered, and he's he immediately freezes half the room and is like, "Hey, I will absolutely popsicle you. Don't test me." And Blackbeard's just like, "No, it's all good. It's all good, man. It's all good." He calms him down again, and like you said, asks him what he wants. I think. It's not necessarily that he like laid out his plans for Blackbeard like right there, and they came to like an accord or anything like that. I think this is more. I think it's more of a dream type situation. The agenda of the various Blackbeard pirates is something that I don't think we've interrogated before too much. But it is worth noting that he's got a very eclectic crew, even from his original crew members that. Since they're supposed to be kind of the mirror images of the Straw Hats, they must have dreams of their own to accomplish, right?
That's what it seems like. And, I would imagine a lot of them are like elemental, like Jesus Burgess just wants to have the most strength of anybody, stuff like that. Like Doc Ocker never wants to miss a shot again. It's probably going to be along those lines. But then with Aokiji, you could have, I want to, do something that aligns with similar to what Robin's dream is, of like bringing real justice to the world in his case, or sort of like shining a light on what the world government has been doing. I know we talked before about there being like a Marine civil war between the Marines who are allied with the Navy and the ones who are allied with the world government, and that being a major point of contention. And that's why a lot of people have been like, oh, maybe Kuzan is doing this but would betray Blackbeard if it meant that he could re-team up with the good Marines or something. Maybe this fight with Garp and crew is a precursor to ultimately a patching things up or a union of them as allies. Who knows? Because we still just don't know with this guy. I still like the idea of him just being a villain. And he's just going to be a villain moving forward. And maybe he has a big fight with a Straw Hat at some point, and they get out of him what he really wanted, and he realizes the error of his ways, and he loses not because the person overpowered him, but Usopp talks him down, and that's how Usopp defeats one of the former admirals, and God Usopp declares himself the Sniper King, replacing Soga King finally. His dream.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I want to point out with this specifically is... That
was a joke, by the way. People were like...
No. Who is Soga King is one of the greatest mysteries of all of One Piece.
No, I just mean the idea of like Usopp fighting Aokiji instead of Talkhawker. I could just hear people's keyboards just clashing.
I'm very pro Usopp fighting anybody, so... but with Kuzan specifically, he's asked what he wants in the flashback, but he does say something to Garp about, I live my life the way that I want now. And it's possible that, devoid of any other agenda, that just the ability to live free is enticing enough to him. Think of why Yamato wanted to join the crew. Yamato really just wants to be free, to have those same adventures that they read about in Odin's journal. That's Luffy's goal ultimately, outside of like the specific dream. The boy just wants to be free. And under the Admiral rules, under his teacher, under all of this, like Garp always got away with whatever Garp wanted, but Kuzan never did. But now under Blackbeard, he can do what he wants. And so it's with that resolution, he puts his fists up and he's ready to brawl.
There you go. And so he is fighting Garp. He's got to know that this isn't going to be an easy fight. He even kind of looks a little bit like, there's this mention that he was a senior apprentice to Garp. Now, we knew that the two were friendly. We've seen them be buds before, but I don't think it was ever like confirmed that they were like master apprentice at some point. I mean, it makes sense considering Garp's age, but I think that there is something kind of thematically interesting about Garp sticking up for his new protege, who he sees as the future of the Marines. Although at the same time, telling Kuzan to come back to the Navy, he doesn't, he obviously doesn't want Kuzan to remain the way he is. And it's kind of funny too, because I mean, technically, Kuzan outranked Garp before he left the Marines, which is just wild to consider. Garp is the most overpowered vice admiral there is, and by choice on his part. But that said, they have their fight. Kuzan uses a technique called Ice Ball on Garp. It doesn't work. And then Garp uses like this claw kind of attack called Blue Hole. Tons of Conqueror's Hockey. Even Sanji would probably be like, oh, I want to look into that. And then that sends Kuzan down a hole. And that's it for the Kuzan stuff. Big fight to come. Some people were sort of like, "Oh, it's over." Hilarious. Who do you think is going to win? What's going to happen?
This is going to be interesting. So first off, I want to point out that Garp broke out of that with his mouth because it's a crunch. Like you see the cracks happening right around us. He did it with his mouth, which is the most monkey. It's the most monkey D that Garp has ever been. Period. Is breaking through that with his mouth. Speaking of the monkey D, that blue hole, him grabbing him, you know what that kind of looks like with just the stiffness of that hand? That makes me think of Sabo's Dragon Claw style.
Yeah, which he learned from Dragon.
Yeah, right? I mean, Dragon had to learn it somewhere, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go. Lots of stuff there to come.
This is in terms of an outcome, though. Kuzan, right? That's
I think
what this has all been about.
I think Garp overpowers Kuzan and it looks like Kuzan's going to lose. But then the other Blackbeard captains come in and do something dishonorable to basically like Whitebeard Garp. Maybe not kill him, but leave him to the point where Kuzan has to like maybe step in to prevent him from dying or something. And then we have another sort of like on this island on Fulalead, the Marines were soundly defeated or something like that. Yeah. Where Garp has to essentially sacrifice himself to stave off Kuzan and the other Titanic captains. I keep saying Titanic captains. That's technically, and I know people were making jokes of like Titanic, and I made the joke earlier about iceberg. The actual Japanese word, it has nothing to do with like the Titanic. It's not supposed to be a literal reference. It's just supposed to mean huge. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
We do the best that we can with the little language we have here.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're little happy accidents, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think this is a clean sort of like Kuzan loses and then Garp and them sailed away. Like, no, like that's not happening.
That's not.
Especially after what happens in this chapter and like the rule threes. You know, I think we have a clear sort of like an L for kid, an L for law, which is fitting. And then I think there will be an L for Garp and crew. And I think it'll be kind of a tactical retreat or something like that. And then it's going to lead to Egghead. And after all of these like failures, all this stuff, that's when we end on like, okay, what is this big incident? So I want to move over to the law stuff. The Polar Tang is destroyed. Blackbeard, you know, good on Law. He put some hits in. I think that the attacks that we saw too, were the same ones he used against Big Mom, they did real damage. I like that Oda is not overpowering Teach too much because it kind of prevents him from, you know, obviously the temptation is to make Teach seem so imposing of like, oh, really hyping up him being Luffy's main adversary. But no, I mean, they kind of show him he gets cuts, he gets bruises, he gets hurt. But of course, ultimately Law loses. And I think that makes perfect sense considering, like, I think that Law just doesn't have a powerful enough crew. I think Law on his own, tough dude. I think he's like one of the strongest characters in the show, in the series, in the manga. But he just doesn't, like, he's not Luffy. He's not he doesn't have protagonist energy, but also he doesn't have like the allies. And this manga keeps showing us that is the key to like becoming the Pirate King. Roger could not do it by himself. He needed really powerful allies. He needed Odin, right? As strong as he was, that's the real key to victory in One Piece in this story. It's not just who is tougher than the other guy. And I think it's really interesting too that like we get the Rocky Port gets brought up again, you know, and we see that something's going on with Beppo. But before Beppo does the whole like Rumble Ball thing, I think it's interesting that Blackbeard says that he can't decide whether to sell the OPOP fruit, Law's fruit, or use it, essentially like find a way to coerce Law into, you know, granting him eternal life. And that's interesting, isn't it? Of like, we know that Blackbeard's been hunting devil fruits. I don't remember if it was like strongly hinted or like confirmed or anything that he sells them. But it would make perfect sense that like he's amassed a ton of wealth doing that sort of thing. Though it does make me kind of wonder who he's been selling these fruits to. You know, other pirates, the world government. That was like a little rabbit hole, a little black hole, maybe, that I was going down. I wasn't sure if you had any thoughts on that.
It does make sense. I do like that his hesitation really seems to be like, if I use the fruit, I can't give myself eternal life, right? I gotta give this to somebody. Do I sell it? Like, I could see that being, it's kind of funny because if he's been selling devil fruits, it kind of puts his black market like right in that power vacuum that Kaido's black market used to occupy.
It does,
with his
and
fake
it's
ones,
like real devil fruits now. Yeah,
which is curious. If Blackbeard's been doing this, you would think that with the extra, you know, the exporting of Smile and everything, that like Kaido and Blackbeard would be like more antagonistic than they were.
Yeah, that is interesting because it's not like Wano is far away, and you know, it seems like Blackbeard has sort of been kind of just wreaking havoc the past couple of years. And there, as far as I recall, I don't remember Kaido even acknowledging the existence of Blackbeard, caring about Blackbeard, none of that. So it is interesting. I mean, you could argue that Kaido is in that same zone where he's like, look, if I do the wrong thing, or if I export too many resources or invest too many resources into something, either the world government, Shanks, or Blackbeard take me down. Like if I can't go to war with Big Mom, because I can't go to war with Shanks. I can't go to war. But if I do any of these one things, I can't go to war with the world government. Then one of the other factions is going to take advantage of that. And so, sure, I think that's why he's trying to build such a huge crew so that he can outpace Blackbeard, but can't necessarily like take him down because he's not a small fry. That's my take.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it's also possible that Blackbeard might be selling his fruits in a more niche way that doesn't necessarily interfere with how Kaido or Doflamingo were doing the business.
He could be selling them to pirates who join his fleet. You know, it's like you pay for a devil fruit, you get the devil fruit, but you also have to be on my crew. I don't know.
That sounds. That's, I mean, I would guess Blackbeard, and this is kind of where he's talking about. I don't think he would sell anything that would necessarily like ruin his life, right? Like make it harder for him later on, right? That sounds. That sounds.
If he's going to sell a big devil fruit, it's got to be to somebody that isn't going to like use it against him. So yeah, it's kind of
right. That would have to be
Blackbeard.
That is. But like I said, how much of this is just Teach kind of like being a poster, and maybe how much is him knowing stuff, right? Like
maybe one day we'll see like one of his three, because he has like the three little like beard tentacles, and like maybe they're gonna come to life, and that's where the fruits are coming out of or something.
I mean,
tossing around
I'm sure you've heard the hundreds of different like how does Blackbeard work theories. Sure. So I mean, maybe he is literally the tree. Who knows? I do want to point out though that while Law is powerful, this of course didn't surprise anyone because Trafalgar Law is kind of a pro at taking L's.
Yeah, we haven't seen him in this state since. He was pretty like soundly like beaten up against Big Mom.
I'm going to absolutely sleep on the couch for saying that, but it's true. Like my guy likes taking L's and that's fine. He's alive. That's what's important for the long-term purposes. My guess for him, before anything else is that it was probably decently close. I'm very curious how this submarine was cut in half like that.
Yeah, that's true. Because we don't have a swordsman with us right now. We have Burgess. We have
get down there.
Augur.
Augur could have shot it, I guess. Does he have a bullet powerful enough to do that?
Maybe Stronger has a sword. Maybe like a sword comes out of his mouth, and he just.
But how does he? How do they get underwater? That's because the submarine is still underwater.
It has to be like an attack, that they sent under the water, and with observation hockey, who knows? But it's a sad day. And as Blackbeard mentions, it's like, if you don't have a ship, you're not much of a pirate crew. There's no way that they can escape, but we get our Beppo moment. The Beppo moment, people have been waiting for a while. Beppo doing something of note, because this character has been around since Sabaody Archipelago, and let it just be said, this character has been hanging. He's been there. He's very rarely done anything. This is the first time I think like Beppo has done something and I've been like, oh, I'm interested in Beppo right now. I think he's just like a fan service kind of character for that reason. People love his design. But anyway, he takes a rumble ball that Chopper apparently made especially for him, but wasn't sure would work, and it turns him Sulong. And we have been speculating. Everyone's been speculating for the longest time. What Chopper's like, he's awakened monster point. Could that have some similarity to the Sulong thing? I've definitely had that thought of like, ever since Carrot went Sulong back in Whole Cake Island, and Chopper was there. I was like, if Chopper's observing this, could Chopper one day use that kind of observation to figure out a way to do it for himself that would be different from Monster Point, maybe. But a couple of things to note: we finally see Beppo Sulong form. Which we didn't see in Wano because, it wouldn't have been, I think, as people were disappointed by that. They're like, well, we never saw Beppo do Sulong, even though the moon was out. But he was always like inside. I think Oda withheld it for this. Yeah. I think Oda knew this was coming, right? But it only lasts apparently like a minute, because the next panel we see that like he escapes with Law, but the Sulong form has already gone away. Maybe he got rid of it on purpose so that he would be able to, hide a little bit easier. I don't know. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I think it goes back to Chopper being, to Chopper kind of explaining, hey, I don't know that this is going to work. Kind of, it's still very experimental. Obviously the Rumble Ball for Chopper has been an experiment over an extended period of time, to get it to the point that it's at now. It's very arguable that a real awakening would not even require that. So it's possible that it's just, you can't mess with the natural aspects of it too much. Like, you need that full moon in order to stay in that mode. Because, being inside is enough to negate it, right? Like, you have to be in the full moon. So it's possible that, like, you can't chemically replicate that for a long period of time. And also because if you could just do Sulong at will, I think that kind of breaks the minx, you know what I mean? I do like, though, that Chopper is called out here, because it's a complaint that some people have had. And I'm not going to say that's an invalid complaint. But people have kind of noted that they think that a lot of Straw Hats have been held back in their progression because of all these other events going on. And I like this idea that Chopper's skill has increased by having to do things like study the Sulong form and develop a way to trigger it, even temporarily. Imagine how impressive that is. That just saved someone's life. On an entirely different island, Chopper just saved someone's life. Like, no doubt. And even though Blackbeard wasn't going to like kill Law right away, it looks like, he saved him, and he did that from a distance, because that's what that's what doctors in medicine do, right?
And I think he's a big Heart Pirates fan. I think he has a lot of respect for
their
Law
friends
as a doctor.
Friends. Yeah. So it's like, this is a huge win for Chopper, I think, in his skill set, his actual skill set, which is his ability to learn, his ability to create medicine, his ability to achieve things that have never been achieved before. This is fight. His fight against Queen was cool because he's punches Queen a couple of times. But what was really interesting about that was actually dealing with the Ice Oni thing. And I know people think the Ice Oni thing is a big waste of time, but it's important for Chopper to be able to do that on the fly. Like, that shows his skill. And this is a good, hey, Chopper leveled up, and as a result of that has led to a change in the world. And I think we're going to see that more with the other Straw Hats. We're going to discover that Frankie made an upgrade to the Thousand Sunny that, changes boats forever. I don't know. It's possible.
So there's so much else to get into here. One of those things being that, Katarina, Devon, and Lafitte, if they're heading to Egghead, that kind of changes the dynamic of what's to come, right? Because in that case, I kind of see them maybe doing something a little bit more stealth. My first thought was, what if they kidnap Luffy? We know that Devon is able to transform into other characters, could easily trick him. And Lafitte is a character who can use hypnosis. And I thought, that's kind of elaborate. I mean, we've talked about Luffy getting separated. But then I thought, okay, well, they're outside the Egghead Island like the other Marines. What if, after Kizaru goes to Egghead to do his Admiral thing, what if they kidnapped Saturn? What if this incident that we've been hearing about, the Egghead incident, is that Gorosei, one of the members of the Gorosei, was captured? Or even better, captured and then replaced with somebody who looks like him. And Katarina Devon starts to pose as Saturn. Or a third thing, sorry, I just thought of this. Pudding can look into people's memories, right? If they had Saturn and they have Pudding, and they could look into Saturn's mind, and Blackbeard could find out a ton of information, well.
I just want to let you cook on this now. Does that
well, now I'm just going toward and then Luffy is there too, and we have a Pudding Sanji reunion, and we have a sort of this is how we find out about the burn scar guy. Because Blackbeard, that's what Blackbeard wants right now, right? To find the burn scar guy. And if their suspicion is that it's somebody affiliated with the world government, then they would probably want one of the Gorosei. This is why I just don't like the idea of like Dragon being the burn scar guy, because why would he have the poneglyph? That doesn't really make sense to me.
Right.
It's like, what would the revolutionaries like? It doesn't really, who cares? But yeah. I think that if it is somebody that, the world government knows who it is, or they could get information, that would make a lot of sense. And it doesn't have to be Saturn. It could be somebody else entirely. But I don't know. I just like this idea of like them going to Egghead because maybe originally they were going to kidnap Vegapunk because they thought maybe Vegapunk knows who the guy with the burn scars is. But then they see all this pandemonium and they just do something kind of different on the fly.
Oh my gosh, a guy who knows a bunch of stuff. Of course it was Vegapunk. It was right on the tip of my tongue this whole time. I knew it.
Right.
But no, that's an interesting idea, because you're right. At this point, because now that Law has been defeated, hypothetically, Blackbeard has the Zo poneglyph, which earlier in the flashback we know he didn't know about. Yes. But Law had it, so now Blackbeard has it. Safe assumption. So yeah, I guess he's now caught up to. He's the one that's caught up to the Straw Hats by default.
That's right. And the war for the last poneglyph begins now, and it's probably going to coincide with 2 other wars that we know of. I thought this was also an interesting thought experiment. I was talking to somebody who was like, "Man, I see like Kid got wiped out by Shanks so easily, but Law had a real fight against Blackbeard." And we were kind of debating this, and I was like, yeah, well, one of the reasons that Law was able to do that is because he didn't go into a fight super recklessly. He used his brain. But, and I think that he would have done better against Shanks. I don't think Shanks would have just defeated him super easily. He probably would have like played around with him a little bit more, but Kid was way too reckless. On the other hand, what if you had switched Kid and Law's opponents here? What if Kid was the one that went up against Blackbeard? I honestly kind of wonder if Kid would have done a lot better than Law, considering he has a stronger crew, and that he has his full crew against a few of Blackbeard's, and he is pretty strong. And he could have been in a situation where Blackbeard underestimates him, and he could have done real damage. Obviously, I think the result's going to be the same, but I just wonder if, like, for both characters, they had bad matchups. Maybe. I
mean, that's the fate side of it, right? Because they drew lots for this. This is the fate that they chose for themselves. That's the lesson we're supposed to be taking from this. If you switched, I would question. The first thing I would question is, honestly, if Law would even bother engaging with Shanks.
Right. Exactly.
I would question if that would not be something a bit more strategic in terms of a camaraderie, because we know for a fact Shanks has no problem doing a little bit of a party with a crew. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, he meets Law and he's like, "Oh, you're a friend of Luffy's. I like Luffy." And Law begrudgingly goes, "Yeah, I guess I also like him too." And then they drink over that. That's how I would see that happening. And then Shanks is late for whatever he was supposed to be leaving for anyway. Like, that is how I would see that play out. I don't think Law has a need to fight Shanks.
I just thought
anything. Oh, he had an epiphany.
You know what's been bugging me?
What?
Man with burn scars. If Shanks just got the poneglyphs he needs, right? The one he probably doesn't have is Zo. And that could be where he's headed next. And that could be like, because we know Zo is coming back into the story with, with Momonosuke and opening up the borders, all that stuff. And that could be where Shanks is headed of like, oh, I got to find that poneglyph. But then how would he already have the man with burn scars poneglyph? Well, if that theory is correct, that it's a Roger pirate, and it's the poneglyph that he's had all along, that he's known about at least, then that could be another feather in the cap of it being a Roger pirate. Of Shanks already being like, well, I already got that connection, and like he had it from the beginning, maybe beginning of the story.
Right, because the last one is the one that was on Fishman Island, right? That went away. That vanished. Someone took it, and who knew where it was? The Roger Pirates knew where it was.
And that's why I think people are gravitating toward the Sunbelt thing, because it would make so much thematic sense for it to be in the hands of a Roger Pirate, and then if Blackbeard goes after a Roger Pirates, thus like dethroning the legacy or something like that, and then it would be, I think, too much to have Shanks and Luffy and Blackbeard pursuing the same character.
Just roaming, and Shanks is like the guy you have to go through to get to this guy.
Maybe.
And it's just roaming. That's probably it, isn't it? That's like knowing that like this guy, whoever he is, would have had to go pick it up at some point, Maybe that's how people know he's got it, because he took that ship in there and took it. It's become like a local legend.
I guess we will find out.
I guess so.
Eventually, someday.
You had me thinking about the egghead thing, because like eventually we have to. I can't believe we're saying this. Eventually we have to go back to Egghead.
I know, it's been a month, maybe longer, since we had any scene on Egghead, and even then it was brief.
Such a weird reality when you think about how we were seeing these cutaways and saying to ourselves, we'll see it in a year when we check back in. And now,
I mean, we correctly predicted that the law fight would be off screen. So as these things tend.
That's kind of a shame, because like I said, Law likes taking L's, but like his fight against Big Mom was great. I thought it was an excellent fight. I would have liked to see another weird Devil Fruit matchup.
I think the anime is getting close, is still kind of giving us the Big Mom fight more and more, and it's pretty wild. I don't know where you're at with the anime right now, but
it's good stuff.
The Gear 5th intrigue is just, the hype is unreal.
It's coming. It's just, that's the thing. Like, it's coming.
It's gonna be a while.
Right. That's the anime for you. One final question, though, for you here on the end of this chapter. Where do you think Beppo is going to take Law?
I kind of was thinking about this, and I was like, okay, what are the islands that are close by? We could be going to Elbath. So we could have like a Law Straw Hat reunion if Straw Hats are going to Elbath, which might be too soon for that. I doubt they're going to Egghead. That's too much craziness. They're probably just going to another island, right? Probably just an island we don't know about. It could be that island that they found a Kiji in. They could be going to Full of Lead, and like laying low there or something. Who knows? But maybe they're going to Zoe. Maybe Zoe isn't too far away. Zoe was just at Wano. That would be a perfect place for Beppo to go, to reunite with the Minx and Ernest. And, Law's been to Zoe before, so he should have an idea. Like, it wouldn't be like a wild idea for them to be taking shelter there. They have like a rapport.
Zoe is actually what I was thinking too, to be honest, because that sounds like a place Beppo would be able to find. And yeah, they have allies there, because unless they were really going to let Law just become a Straw Hat, I don't know why why they would seek out the Straw Hats.
We're going to see Queen Carrot on her throne.
Yeah.
Being like, I could have been a Straw Hat. She's drunk in this scenario.
Or you get there and you find out she never made it back and she's hiding in the ship like everybody thought.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, she's like, make room, Caribou. I can't believe we're still being teased about the Caribou thing. It's been so long. But
Caribou Ex Machina is coming, because it must.
Well, in the meantime, we're going to have a week off next week in terms of the manga. But stay tuned. We'll, of course, be back here for Rookie Pirate Radio. Again, if there's anything we miss, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff, because we don't have all the time in the world. Be sure to hit us up on the Discord server. And, of course, send us an email if you prefer. Links to that, or all the info for that, is in the show notes. And Travis, until next time, until we set sail on wherever this chat, I don't know where we're going to be at next week. Or next 2 weeks from now. I assume it's Egghead. I think we're kind of, but I mean, do you think we're going to off-screen the Garp Kuzan fight, or do you think that's going to continue?
I think it's going to continue because it already has. We've already gotten 2 chapters of it, so I don't see why it wouldn't continue. I don't think it's continuing next. I think this is pacing on Oda's part to kind of compensate for the breaks, because it's easier to break away from these bits that aren't supposed to be the main story than it is to like interrupt Egghead. I think he's trying. I know people think like the week-to-week pacing is bad, but like Oda really clearly is outlining these arcs in a way to try to compensate for his breaks wherever he can.
So then here's my prediction. I think the next chapter will open with more of Winter Island. Not Winter Island, sorry, Full of Lead. And I think we're going to see a continuation of like Garp versus Kuzan, but then I think we're going to see the other captains show up, and then the tide turn, and then you see that like things aren't going to be so great for Garp. Then we will cut to Egghead in that chapter, and then we'll find out what happens like 2 months from now or something. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it would be, if they do that, the best way to transition that would be to reveal who's on the raft heading to Egghead. Like that would be the best way to transition that.
Yes, it's sort of like we're in the room with Oda right now. Hey, Oda, thanks for making such a fine piece of entertainment for the world. We appreciate
could you tell us if the cookbook means anything?
Yeah, that's what we chose. He's like, you get one question. All right. I think Travis and I agree.
Settle this right now. Does this eye patch character count?
He even gives us an out. He's just like, you don't want to know what the One Piece is? You want to know about the All Blue? Okay, sure.
No, that's what the journey is for. That's
yeah, we don't want any shortcuts to that. We just yeah, in due time, Oda. Yeah. All right. See everybody. Thanks again for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. We'll be back. To be continued.